Dry Creek, Montana, 1874. The dust hadn't yet settled when Eli Carter rode into town. He wasn't looking to buy anything. Not cattle, not supplies, and certainly not people. But that's exactly what was happening in the center of the square. An auction, loud and cruel, the kind that made even the sky seem ashamed. Eli hadn't shaved in weeks. His boots were worn thin, and his coat hung loose over his frame. Since Mary died, the ranch had fallen into silence. Cattle dwindled, the land cracked, and Eli, he was just surviving, not living. But when he saw them, a woman standing tall despite her torn shawl with 6 children huddled behind her, he couldn't look away. They were being sold as a unit. A widow, barely 30, with soft eyes and grit in her jaw, and children ranging from a babe in arms to a lanky boy barely Eli's own son's age had he lived. The crowd laughed. No one bid. The auctioneer smirked, tapping his gavel like it was a game. "No man wants a burden of 7, someone sneered. That's when Eli raised his hand. A hush fell. Even the wind stopped. "I'll take 'em," he said. The gavel dropped. And just like that, Eli Carter owned more than he ever expected, and perhaps exactly what he needed. The wagon creaked beneath the weight of its new passengers. Dust clung to the wheels like regret, and the horses moved slow, as if they too were uncertain what waited back at the Carter ranch. Eli sat at the reins, silent. He hadn't spoken since the auction, not a word. Not to the children, not to their mother. He didn't even know her name. She finally broke the silence. "Clara, my name's Clara," she said quietly, almost like an offering. Eli nodded once, his eyes never leaving the road. "Eli," he replied. "Carter." They rode on, the wind stirring Clara's hair as she held her youngest child close to her chest. The girl, maybe 6 months old, had stopped crying once the wagon moved, as if sensing that stillness now meant safety. The other children sat in the back, quiet but watchful. One boy, maybe 12, stared at Eli like he was trying to measure the man. Another child, a girl with freckles and copper-red braids, clutched a book with no cover, her lips moving silently as if reading gave her something to hold on to. Clara finally spoke again. "I'm grateful. You didn't have to." "I know," Eli cut in. "Didn't do it to be thanked." The tone wasn't cruel, just tired, worn out like the land he owned. They arrived at the ranch by sundown. The house stood leaning slightly to the right, with a porch in need of nails and a roof missing more than a few shingles. Chickens scattered as the wagon pulled up. A single cow lowed from the pen, skinny and alone. Clara looked at the home, and then at Eli. He didn't say a word, just grabbed a lantern and started unloading their few belongings. The children followed her inside, eyes wide, but not frightened. It wasn't worse than what they'd had, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, they weren't being moved on like cattle. As the stars crept across the sky, Eli sat on the porch, whittling a stick with his old hunting knife. Clara stepped out with a blanket draped over her arms. "They're asleep," she said. "That was fast," Eli answered, surprised. Clara smiled, tired but genuine. "When children feel safe, sleep comes easier." He didn't answer right away, then softly, "I don't know what I've just done. Don't know if I can be what they need." Clara sat down beside him, not close, but not far either. "You didn't buy 7 burdens today, Mr. Carter. You brought home 7 hearts. And hearts, they know how to grow where they're planted." Eli hadn't heard so many footsteps in years. Small ones, fast ones, careful ones, padding down the hallway of a house that had been quiet for far too long. Morning sunlight crept across the wooden floor as the smell of weak coffee and wood smoke drifted through the air. Clara was already up, tending the fire with sleeves rolled and hair tied back in a plain ribbon. She looked up as Eli stepped into the kitchen. "The children slept on the floor," she said softly. "But they didn't complain." "We'll figure something better," Eli muttered, pouring himself a tin cup of coffee. The table had a few scraps of food, some hard bread, leftover beans, and what looked like dried apples from a forgotten jar. It wasn't much, but it was something. Outside, the older kids explored the dusty yard. Samuel, the oldest, walked the broken fence line with a squint that reminded Eli of himself when he was that age. The red-haired girl, Annie, sat near the empty water trough, reading a book with no cover, lips moving silently as she read. "That boy of yours," Eli said, nodding toward Samuel through the window. "He knows what he's doing." "He watched his father work the land before we lost everything," Clara replied, voice steady but soft. They stood in silence for a moment. Later that afternoon, Eli hauled out a broken wagon axle, inspecting it for repair. Clara approached quietly, carrying a pair of stitched feed sacks. "If you fix that cart," she said, We could use these to haul water from the creek. He looked at her, not surprised, but something close to grateful. You sew? I do what needs doing. That evening, trouble found them sooner than expected. Samuel tripped over a rotted porch board, cutting his leg just below the knee. Eli cleaned the wound carefully, wrapping it in a clean rag from Clara's bag. His hands were clumsy but careful. Thanks, Mr. Carter, the boy said, wincing. Call me Eli, he answered, tightening the knot gently, then softer. You did good today. For the first time since his wife passed, Eli sat at a full table that night. The lantern flickered between them as the children shared stories of places they'd seen, people they'd met. Clara listened, smiling just enough to warm the space around her. Eli didn't say much, but he watched them. He listened, and when he rose from the table, something inside him whispered, maybe this broken house didn't need to stay empty after all. The first cold wind came early. Leaves rustled dryly along the fence posts, and the mountains in the distance wore a gray shadow that hadn't been there a week ago. The children had started sleeping huddled together in the only room with a working fireplace. Eli had brought in extra wood, but even that wouldn't last through a full winter if they didn't find a better way. Clara stood on the porch that morning, arms folded across her shawl, eyes locked on the hills. Snow's coming sooner than it should, she said quietly. Always does when you ain't ready, Eli replied, stepping down with a rusted bucket in hand. That day, Eli hitched up what was left of his mule team and took Samuel with him to the nearby creek. They loaded barrels of water, brought back whatever they could, and tried to laugh when one of the wheels came off halfway back to the barn. Clara was baking when they returned, cornbread or something like it, made from what little was left in the pantry. We'll run out of flour in 2 days, she admitted. After that, it's just beans and hope. Eli ran a hand through his beard, lips pressed tight. There's a supply post 30 miles east. It'll cost. We don't have coin, she said. No, but I have a saddle and a rifle that still shoots. She didn't stop him. Didn't argue. But her eyes followed him to the barn. That night, Clara found Eli fixing an old saddle strap under the lantern's glow. She brought him a cup of tea, barely warm, barely tea, and sat beside him on an overturned feed bucket. You're risking a lot for people you didn't ask for, she said. Eli didn't look up. You think I planned any of this? No, she said, but I think you needed it more than you knew. That silenced the barn. Outside, the wind howled. He left at first light. Samuel tried to go with him, but Eli shook his head. Stay and help your ma. This place needs you more than I do right now. And then he was gone. Horse hooves pounding over frozen earth, toward a trading post that might have forgotten his name. The days without him were hard. The roof leaked. One of the twins got a cough. Clara tried to mend Eli's coat for him, though she didn't know if he'd even return to wear it. Each night, she read aloud to the children from a Bible missing half its pages. Her voice cracked, but the little ones still smiled. And then, 3 nights later, a knock came at the door. Clara opened it with a lantern in one hand and fear in the other. It wasn't Eli. It was someone from his past. Clara's fingers tightened around the lantern handle. The man at the door was tall, wrapped in a dust-covered coat, his hat pulled low. A scar ran from his jaw to the corner of his eye, old but hard to miss. He didn't smile, didn't tip his hat. Evening, he said. I'm looking for Eli Carter. Clara stepped forward, chin lifted. He's not here. Went east for supplies. That's so. The stranger's voice had a weight to it. Not loud, just dangerous. Behind her, Samuel stepped into the room with a fire poker in hand. The younger kids stirred from the other side of the cabin. Who are you? Clara asked. The man took a slow step forward, then stopped himself. Name's Boone. Used to ride with Eli, a long time ago. Clara didn't lower the lantern. What do you want with him? Not trouble, if that's what you're thinking, he said, his eyes scanning the room behind her. Just unfinished things between us. He'll know what I mean. She hesitated, then pushed the door closed enough to block the view of the children. You can wait in the barn, not the house. Boone didn't argue. He spent the night in the hayloft, didn't ask for food, didn't ask questions. But Clara didn't sleep that night. She kept the rifle next to her chair, watching the window for any flicker of movement. Samuel stayed up with her. He didn't speak much, but his presence gave her courage. 2 days passed, and then as snowflakes began to dance in the sky, hooves broke the silence. Eli returning. He looked exhausted, coat dusted in frost, but his eyes scanned the yard with purpose. When he saw Boone's horse tied by the barn, he stopped cold. Clara met him halfway to the porch. He said he knew you, she whispered. Didn't seem like a friend. Eli nodded slowly. He used to be. Boone stepped out of the barn, arms at his sides, not reaching for anything. Wasn't expecting company, Eli said, voice tight. Didn't come to fight, Eli. Just wanted to see if you were still breathing. Eli glanced toward the house, then back at him. Well, I am, and I've got mouths to feed now. So if you came to stir up the past, you're too late. Boone's face shifted, almost like regret. Almost. I'll be gone by morning. Just had to see it with my own eyes. You really changed. Yeah, Eli muttered. Some of us had to. That night, Boone left a small pouch on the porch. Silver coins, barely enough to feed a man for a week, but it was something. He rode off without another word. And Eli? He stood alone in the falling snow, staring into the dark where the man disappeared. He used to be my brother, he whispered to Clara. Not by blood, but close enough. Some brothers are meant to leave, she replied. Eli turned toward her, eyes tired but soft. Some are meant to stay. Inside, the fire crackled. Outside, the first snow settled on a ranch no longer quiet, no longer broken. And for the first time since Mary passed, Eli Carter believed spring might just come again. The first true storm hit 3 days later. Snow poured down in thick sheets, covering the fences, the corral, the porch steps, burying everything in silence. The ranch became a world of white and wind. Eli had barely made it back from chopping firewood when the front door slammed shut behind him. Clara was stoking the stove, face flushed from the heat, her sleeves rolled up and dusted with flour. The children sat close together under a quilt, whispering stories and laughter between them. It was the kind of scene Eli hadn't known he missed. Storm's gonna last all night, he said, pulling off his coat. I already made stew, Clara replied, and there's enough bread for tomorrow if we ration. You always plan ahead? She shrugged. It's not just my life anymore. Eli gave a small nod, something warm flickering behind his tired eyes. That evening, after supper, Clara sat beside the twins, brushing knots from their hair. Samuel helped Eli check the windows for drafts, stuffing old towels beneath the frames. Ruth, the second oldest girl, offered to mend a torn blanket, something Mary used to do without asking. The cabin had become a home, and yet, for all its warmth, Eli felt a tightness in his chest, a worry that hadn't left him since Boone's visit. Old ties, old debts, the kind of past that didn't stay buried forever. That night he couldn't sleep. He found himself standing on the back porch watching snow fall under a full moon. Clara joined him silently, her shawl wrapped tight. You ever think about leaving? He asked, eyes still on the white fields. When I had nothing, I thought about it every day, she said. Now that I have something, I don't dare. Eli looked at her. Really looked. The wear on her face, the strength in her eyes, the way she had held that broken family together with nothing but will and kindness. You didn't ask for any of this, he said. Neither did you, she replied. But maybe we both needed it. Inside, the children were asleep. Outside, two souls stood in quiet understanding. The ranch hadn't just saved the family. The family had saved it. And perhaps, just perhaps, they had saved Eli too. The storm passed, but the cold remained. Morning brought clear skies and bitter wind. Eli saddled the mule to haul buckets from the frozen creek, and Samuel volunteered to come along, bundled head to toe. Clara stayed behind, busy with chores and younger children. As she stepped outside to shake out rugs, she noticed something half buried near the gate. A bundle, wrapped in oilskin, tied with twine. A letter. Inside the bundle was a worn envelope. The writing was smudged, but one word was clear. Clara. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Clara, if you're reading this, then the preacher told you what I couldn't face saying in person. I never meant to leave like that, but I wasn't strong enough to fight the world with 2 babies and a broken heart. I failed you. I know it. But if you're still in Texas, I need to see you. You deserve answers. I'm at the old homestead. Come if you can. Wade. She sat frozen. Wade. The man who left her years ago. The father of her youngest 2. Dead, she'd believed. Dead, the preacher had said. And now, alive? What is it? Ruth asked softly, having walked in unnoticed. Clara folded the letter quickly. Just an old name from the past. That evening, as the stew simmered and laughter echoed from the children's corner, Clara stood by the window, arms crossed, mind far away. Eli noticed. You all right? He asked. Someone found me, she said. Someone who shouldn't have. Eli didn't pry. He waited. Finally, she turned. There's a man. Wade. He was my husband, the children's father. Eli didn't move, didn't breathe. I thought he died. But now he's asking to see me. And you want to go? She looked at the fire, the children, then at Eli. I don't know, but I owe them the truth. The next morning, Clara left before dawn. Just a day's ride, she said. Samuel stayed close to the younger ones. Ruth helped with the cooking. And Eli Eli watched the horizon like a man guarding a treasure. The road to the old homestead was rough, more path than trail. Clara rode alone through wind-swept valleys and across frozen creeks, her scarf pulled tight, her heart tighter. She hadn't spoken Wade's name aloud in years. She remembered him young, quick with a smile, always chasing dreams too big for their little farm. He'd vanished one spring morning, leaving only a note and a promise he never kept. Now here she was, approaching a crumbling cabin under a crooked sycamore, her breath clouding in front of her like ghosted memories. The door creaked open before she could knock. He stood in the doorway, older, thinner, eyes sunken but unmistakably Wade. "You came," he whispered. Clara didn't smile. "You said I deserved answers, so talk." Inside, the fire was low. A chair by the hearth, a bed in the corner, a stack of unopened letters on the table. "I ran," he said. "That's the truth of it." Clara's jaw tightened. "I know. I raised our children without you. I thought I'd make enough money to send for you all. But it went wrong. I got caught up in something dark, Clara. By the time I realized I was stuck, and I thought you'd be better off without me." "We weren't," she said, voice shaking. They sat in silence. Only the fire cracked between them. "I saw you in town once," Wade said quietly. "Years back. You were carrying one of the babies. I was too ashamed to speak." Clara's hands gripped her skirt. "Why now?" she asked. "Why reach out after all this time?" "Because I'm dying, Clara. Doc says weeks, maybe. And I couldn't leave this world without saying I was sorry." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You don't get to walk back into my life and ask for peace," she said. "But I'll give you one thing. I forgive you. Not for you, but for myself. Because I need to move on." "And the children?" he asked. "They have a home. They have someone who stayed." Clara stood to leave. "His name is Eli," she said at the door. "He didn't come to save us, but somehow he did." Wade nodded, eyes shining. "Then maybe I didn't lose everything." That night, Clara returned to the ranch. The sky was black, the stars scattered like prayer. As she dismounted, the door opened. Eli stood on the porch, lantern in hand. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I said goodbye." He didn't ask to who. He didn't need to. Spring tried to return early that year. The snow melted in patches across the fields, and tiny green shoots dared to stretch from the thawed soil. The children shed their heavy coats and chased each other under the pale sun. Clara returned to baking again. Eli began repairing fence posts that winter had warped. For a moment, it seemed peace had settled on the ranch like soft dust, until the letter came. A rider brought it. Dusty coat, nervous eyes, handed it straight to Eli. "From Sheriff Keene," the rider said. "He told me to ride fast." Eli took it with a nod. The envelope was sealed in wax, official. "You know what this might be?" Clara asked as she dried her hands. "I've got a hunch," Eli muttered, slicing the seal with his pocket knife. The message was short but sharp as a nail. "Eli, Boone Riker's back in town. He's asking questions about you and the family you brought in. Watch your back. Keene." Clara read the note over his shoulder. "Boone Riker?" she asked. Eli closed his eyes a moment, then opened them slow. "Man I used to ride with, before Mary. Before I came back to this land." "Is he dangerous?" "He's trouble, Clara. The kind that don't come alone." That night the mood shifted. Eli oiled his rifle for the first time in months. Samuel noticed, silent but watchful. Clara checked the locks twice before bed. Ruth tucked the little ones in early, not needing a reason. Eli stood outside long after everyone else had gone to sleep, listening to the wind like it might whisper his name. He knew men like Boone didn't just show up. They brought chaos in their shadow. And this time, Eli had something to lose. The next morning, a wagon was spotted just beyond the ridge. Two men, dark hats, watching. Eli stood at the fence, rifle in hand, shoulders squared. "They're just looking for fear," he told Clara. "Let's not give it to them." But in his heart, he knew. Boone Riker wasn't just visiting. He was hunting. By the end of the week, it was no longer a question of if trouble would come, but when. The wagon had returned twice, each time a little closer. Each time no words exchanged, just the silent pressure of being watched. Samuel kept the younger children inside, turning chores into games. Ruth started sleeping downstairs near the hearth, just in case. Clara did what mothers do best. She carried the weight quietly, but it showed in her eyes. Eli patrolled the perimeter each dusk, watching the ridges with the instincts of a man who used to live on the edge of law. Then at sundown one evening they came, 3 riders, Boone Riker in front, grinning like the devil dressed for Sunday. "Eli Harper," he called, stopping just beyond the fence line. "Didn't figure I'd find you playing house with orphans and widows." Eli stepped forward, calm and unshaken. "Keep riding, Boone. Ain't nothing here for you." Boone laughed. "Ain't that the problem? You took something that should have been mine. That wagon full of mouths should have been sold proper. But you swooped in like a hero. Eli didn't flinch. They're not something to be claimed, Boone. They're people. And this is their home now. Boone's smile faded. His voice dropped. We had a deal, Harper. You walk out of our world clean, you don't make waves. But this, he gestured toward the ranch, this is a tidal wave. Clara stood on the porch, rifle in hand, her chin high. Boone's eyes landed on her. So this is the widow? He drawled. Shame to waste such fire on a man with so many ghosts. Eli stepped between them, voice low and steady. Next word out of your mouth better be goodbye. A beat of silence. Boone tipped his hat. We'll be seeing each other real soon. And with that, they rode off. That night, no one slept easy. Eli sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap. Clara brewed coffee that went cold on the stove. The wind moaned through the shutters like it too feared what came next. The children didn't ask questions. They could feel it in the air. At sunrise, hoofbeats thundered again, but this time it was Sheriff Keene. They're camped 5 miles south. 8 men, armed, hungry. And Boone's telling folks he's coming to settle a score. Eli stood silent. You still got that backbone you had back in Dodge? The sheriff asked. It's older now, Eli replied, but still made of steel. The wind kicked up dried dirt across the yard as if warning what was coming. Eli stood in the center of the ranch, eyes scanning every angle. He knew Boone Riker, knew how he thought, how he moved, and that meant one thing. Boone wouldn't attack head-on. He'd wait. Circle. Cut off escape. Break a man down before breaking the door. Clara was in the kitchen, laying out dried beans and hard biscuits. We have food for 3 days, she said, not looking up. If they circle us in, we'll manage. Eli stepped forward, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to stay. I do, she answered quietly. I left running behind a long time ago. Sheriff Keene returned that evening with 2 deputies and a worn map. You've got the advantage, he said. Narrow valley behind the house. One way in unless they try climbing rock walls. We dig in here. Make it look like we expect them. Might rattle them enough to back off. Eli nodded, then paused. I appreciate the help, Sheriff. But I've got one condition. This place isn't turning into a battlefield. Not with 7 kids asleep inside. That night, under a red moon, Eli called a family meeting. The children gathered near the fire, wide-eyed, silent. There's bad men close, Eli said softly. They don't like what we've built here. They want to tear it down. He looked at each child. But I won't let them. Samuel, the oldest, clenched his fists. We can help. You already have, Eli said. You reminded me why this ranch matters. At dawn, Ruth tied her brother's shoes. Clara packed small bags, just in case. Samuel helped Sheriff Keene dig shallow foxholes behind the barn. Even the youngest, Emily, collected dry kindling. No one cried, no one complained, because this wasn't just about Eli anymore. This was their home now. As the sun rose, so did the sound of horses in the distance. 8 riders, dust trailing behind them like smoke from a fuse. Eli stepped forward, rifle slung across his back, hand steady. Clara stood at the door behind him, the children watching from within. Let's finish this, Eli whispered. The hooves hit harder as the Riker gang approached. 8 men fanned out in a loose arc, eyes sharp, rifles visible. Boone Riker was at the center, sitting tall in the saddle, his coat flaring behind him like a shadow given shape. Eli stood alone just beyond the porch, hands empty, rifle still slung but untouched. Not out of fear, but of message. Boone stopped 10 paces short. You always did know how to make an entrance, Harper, he called. Where's the sheriff? Riding the ridge, Eli said, watching, ready. Boone smirked. This don't have to get loud. Then turn around, Eli said. No one here owes you anything. Boone's smile died. You took what I was promised, that family, that chance. Eli stepped forward. You never wanted them. You wanted leverage, headlines, power. Boone's fingers tightened around his reins. And you? You think putting on a good face makes you holy? Eli shook his head. No, but I earned them, Boone, with sweat, with silence, with decency. Behind him, the children had stepped out watching, unafraid. Clara moved beside them, rifle in hand, but lowered. The message was clear. They wouldn't run. Boone spat on the ground. You got guts, Harper. I'll give you that. Then he raised his hand, signal. But instead of a charge, his men hesitated. Sheriff Keene's deputies appeared from the barn roof, rifles aimed. 2 others stepped out from the trees, guns drawn. Boone was surrounded. His men lowered their weapons, unsure, outnumbered. Boone looked around. And finally he laughed. So this is how it ends? No, Eli said calm. This is how you end. Boone stared long and hard, then turned his horse around. I'll see you again, Harper. Not here you won't, Eli said. Next time there won't be a warning. Boone rode off. The gang followed, and the dust began to settle. That night no bullets had been fired, no blood spilled, but a battle had been won all the same. Inside the house, Samuel clapped Eli's shoulder. We stayed. You did, Eli said, voice thick with pride. Clara smiled softly at the window, her hand pressed to the glass. Outside, the stars returned. So did peace. The Riker gang was gone. The dust had settled. But not everything dangerous comes on horseback. Sometimes it lives in the silence afterward. Eli stood behind the barn at sunrise, a shovel in hand. He wasn't digging for anything. He just needed the motion, the rhythm, to keep the old ghosts at bay. Clara found him an hour later. You can stop now, she said gently. We're safe. Eli didn't look up. It ain't about them. It's about who I used to be. She stepped beside him, the morning sun catching the lines around her eyes. Then show me who you are now. Back in the house, Samuel was repairing the porch rail. Ruth and the younger kids were drawing chalk lines on the floor, turning chores into play. The ranch had scars, but it also had roots now. That afternoon, Sheriff Keene returned one last time. Boone's been run out clear to Nevada, he said, removing his hat. You won't hear from him again. Eli nodded, grateful but tired. And what about me, Sheriff? What about you? I've done things the law might remember. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. You're doing right by folks now. That's what we remember. That night, Clara brought out an old photo album. She showed Eli pictures of her late husband, the children when they were still wide-eyed and new to the world. He wasn't perfect, Clara said, but he tried, just like you're trying. Eli looked at the photos, then at her. I never thought I'd get a second chance. You didn't, she said with a soft smile. You made one. Later, as the wind cooled and the lanterns flickered low, Eli sat on the porch with the baby on his knee. The child giggled at his rough beard. Samuel sat nearby with a fishing rod, while Ruth plucked at an old banjo. It wasn't just a ranch anymore. It was a family. Summer stretched long across the Harper Ranch. Wheat grew golden in the fields. The children laughed freely. Clara smiled more often now. And Eli? He had begun to feel like the man he used to be, before everything fell apart. Until the letter arrived. Samuel brought it in with the morning eggs. Postmark says Kansas, he said. Looks old. Eli turned it over in his hands. The paper was yellowed, the corners curled. The name written in shaky ink stopped him cold. Eli Harper. It's from Esther, he muttered. My sister. He hadn't spoken her name in 10 years. Clara watched him open it by the porch rail. The handwriting inside was small, cramped, rushed. Eli, if this reaches you, I'm praying it's not too late. Henry passed. The farm's been sold. I'm sick and don't have much left. But I need to see you. There are things you never knew. Things about your wife and the boy you lost. Please come. The paper shook in Eli's hands. He'd buried that part of his life, sealed it under grief and dust. Now it called out to him from the past. That night, Clara found him sitting by the barn, staring into nothing. You going? Eli nodded slowly. I have to. Then I'll hold things down here, she said. But you come back. Eli looked at her, truly looked. You believe I will? Clara smiled softly. I believe in you. The next morning, he packed only what he needed. Samuel saddled his horse without being asked. Ruth handed him a hand-stitched satchel filled with dried meat and biscuits. Even little Emily gave him her ribbon for luck. Come back, Mr. Eli, she whispered. He crouched, ruffled her hair, and whispered back, That's the plan, darling. As the sun broke the horizon, Eli Harper rode out. Not as a man fleeing trouble, but as one facing it. Behind him, 7 children and 1 strong woman watched in silence. In front of him, a past waiting to be made right. The trail to Kansas was longer than Eli remembered. Every mile stirred up ghosts, some with names, others with faces he hadn't seen since the war. But none of them were as heavy as the one he'd buried 10 years ago. 3 days in, he stopped at a half-empty town called Willow Bend. He didn't need rest. He needed answers. At the saloon, a wiry man with a sheriff's badge and too many years behind his eyes recognized the name. Eli Harper? He asked. I'll be darned. You knew my sister Esther? Sure did. Good woman, kept to herself. The sheriff leaned in. She passed, just last winter. The words hit Eli harder than a fist. Back outside, he sat on the edge of the hitching post, hat pulled low, heart heavy. He'd come too late. But the sheriff returned with something. A worn journal. She left this with the preacher. Said to give it to you if you ever showed up. Eli opened it with shaking hands. Inside were letters, pages of memories, regrets, and confessions. One name kept surfacing, Anna, his wife. And then another, Caleb, his son, the one he believed had died with her. But according to Esther's final words, Caleb had survived. He'd been taken in by a couple in Missouri. Hidden, protected. Eli dropped the journal. The world spun. He's alive, he whispered. Back on the road, the sun was cruel and the land even crueler. But nothing could turn him back now. He wasn't just riding toward a memory. He was riding toward a second chance, toward his son. That night, around a campfire under an open sky, Eli read Esther's final page again. You've suffered enough, little brother. Go find him. Go be the father you were meant to be. The flames flickered, and for the first time in years, Eli cried. But they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of hope. Eli reached the edge of Sweet Hollow, Missouri just after sundown. It was a quiet place, the kind of town where time moved slow and strangers drew curious eyes. He dismounted outside the chapel, journal tucked beneath his coat. Inside, the old preacher looked up with knowing eyes. You Harper's boy? I'm Eli Harper. The preacher nodded and reached beneath the pulpit. Esther said you'd come. She left this too. It was a wooden box. Inside, a baby's boot, a lock of hair, and a name carved in cedar. Caleb. That night, the preacher told him what he knew. The child went to the Whitaker farm. A good family, couldn't have kids of their own. Do they know who he is? Eli asked. Only that he was alone. They gave him a home. Do they still have him? The preacher nodded. He's 14 now, strong boy, quiet but kind. The next morning, Eli rode to the Whitaker farm. He didn't know what to expect. A knock at the door brought a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. You must be the one Esther spoke of, she said gently. Come in. Inside, the walls were lined with school drawings, books, and laughter. Then a voice from the barn. Mama, I fed the calves. A young man stepped in. Brown hair, clear eyes, a quiet strength in his frame. Eli's breath caught. He saw Anna in the boy's eyes, and his own stubborn jaw. Caleb looked at him. Who's he? Mrs. Whitaker glanced at Eli, unsure how to answer. Just a traveler, Eli said softly, looking for something he lost. Caleb tilted his head, curious, but didn't press. You can help me in the barn if you like, the boy offered. Eli blinked, then smiled. I'd be honored. That afternoon they worked side by side, no blood shared, no truths revealed. Just two souls, unknowingly bound by a thread of fate. And when the sun dipped behind the hills, and Caleb laughed at one of Eli's old trail stories, Eli knew. He wouldn't leave again. Eli spent 3 days at the Whitaker farm. He fixed fence posts, helped stack hay, and quietly memorized every detail about Caleb, the way he whistled when he worked, how he looked to the sky before he spoke, and how he always held the gate for his adopted mother. Each night, Eli sat on the porch with Mrs. Whitaker, the silence between them slowly giving way to trust. He's a good boy, she said one evening. We never told him where he came from, just that he was loved. He was, Eli said, his voice cracked. Even when I thought he was gone, he was all I carried. Mrs. Whitaker turned to him. Are you ready to tell him? Eli swallowed hard. I don't know if he's ready to hear it. The next day, Caleb asked Eli a question he wasn't expecting. Why don't you have a home? They were fixing the barn door. The question stopped Eli mid-swing. I did once, he said. Then I lost it. Because of a war? Caleb asked. Something like that. But you came here looking for something. You said so. Eli nodded slowly. I came looking for you. That night, under a sky full of stars, Eli sat Caleb down outside the farmhouse. He handed the boy Esther's journal, open to the last page. That's your aunt's handwriting, Caleb read in silence. Then again, and again. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. You're my father? Eli didn't speak, just nodded. Why now? Caleb whispered. Why did it take so long? Eli's voice trembled. Because I didn't know you were alive. And when I found out, all I wanted was to make it right. Caleb stared at the earth, then looked back at Eli. You really want me back? I never stopped. They didn't hug, they didn't cry out. They just sat beside each other, shoulder to shoulder, as the crickets sang. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The wagon creaked down the dusty trail, its wheels singing a familiar rhythm. Eli rode ahead, reins in one hand, heart in the other. Behind him, Caleb sat beside Mrs. Whitaker, her farewell still fresh in the air. She had kissed the boy's cheek and whispered, Go see the life waiting for you. He hadn't said much since. Eli didn't push him. Words would come when they were ready. By the third night, they camped near a dry riverbed under a canopy of stars. Eli stirred the fire with a stick while Caleb watched in silence. Then quietly, Will they like me? Eli looked up. They'll love you. They just don't know it yet. Caleb frowned. I'm not like them. No, Eli said. You're not. You're you. That's why you belong. They reached the Harper ranch at sundown the next day. The house stood strong, painted by hope, mended by the hands of 7 hearts and 1 determined man. The children ran to meet the wagon, kicking up dust and shouting with laughter, until they saw the boy sitting beside Eli. The youngest, Sarah, blinked. Who's that? Eli dismounted and extended a hand to Caleb. This, he said, his voice rich with something sacred, is my son. The silence was short-lived. Tommy, ever the brave one, stepped forward and offered a handshake. You ride? A little, Caleb answered shyly. We've got an extra saddle, Tommy grinned. Just like that, the tension softened. One by one, the children welcomed him, not with grand gestures, but with gestures that mattered. A shared apple, a space by the fire, a blanket folded twice. That night, Eli stood on the porch with June by his side. "He's quiet," she said. "So was I, when I came back from the war." June looked up at him. "You did good, Eli." Eli watched Caleb laugh with the others around the fire. "I'm trying," he said. "For once, I'm trying to stay." In the distance, coyotes howled. But on the ranch, it was peace that reigned, not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time in years, everyone was home. It was late morning when the stranger rode in. Dust clung to his boots, and his eyes held the quiet weight of someone who'd ridden far, not just in distance, but in life. June was hanging laundry when she saw him approach. She narrowed her eyes. Something about him felt unfinished. He tipped his hat. "Ma'am, looking for an Eli Harper." She hesitated. "What for?" "I've got a letter, been carrying it a while." Eli met the man on the porch. They shook hands, rough palms meeting like two mirrors of the same hardship. The man handed over the letter, sealed in wax, the paper worn at the edges. "Came from Missoula. Woman said if I ever passed through Sweet Hollow, I was to make sure it found you." Eli frowned, thanked him, and took it inside. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he laid it on the table, poured himself a coffee, and stared at it like it might vanish if he blinked too fast. June entered, wiping her hands on her apron. "Who's it from?" "Don't know. Missoula's far. I haven't spoken to anyone there and—" He trailed off. Then slowly he opened the letter. The handwriting was soft, careful, feminine. "Eli, I don't know if this will ever reach you, but I had to try. I heard from a traveling doctor that you were alive, that you'd come back. You should know the truth about what happened the night Caleb was taken." The rest of the letter unraveled like a thread, pulling Eli into memories he'd buried deep. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't war. It was betrayal from someone he once called a friend. He set the letter down, hands trembling. June touched his shoulder. "Eli, what did it say?" His voice was hollow. "It changes things." She sat beside him. "Then we face it, together." Eli looked up. "It's not just about me, it's about Caleb." Outside, the wind picked up. The children were still playing, and Caleb was mending a fence, head down, shoulders square. He had no idea that everything was about to shift again. The sun sat low on the horizon as Eli walked the fence line to find Caleb. The boy was tightening a post, sleeves rolled, dirt smudging his brow, working just like Eli had at that age, maybe younger. "You got the hands of a Harper," Eli said softly. Caleb looked up, half smiling. "Did I put it in wrong?" "No, you did it just right." A pause stretched between them. Eli held the letter in his coat pocket. It felt heavier than a rifle. "There's something I need to tell you." They sat on a fallen log by the edge of the pasture, the evening breeze playing with the tall grass. "Your mother," Eli began, "didn't give you up by choice." Caleb looked over, wary. "What do you mean?" "There was someone I trusted. Someone who thought I wouldn't come back. He told her I'd died. Then he took you and left." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Who?" Eli shook his head. "It doesn't matter now, he's gone. But the truth, you, was left behind." Caleb said nothing for a long while. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "I spent years thinking I wasn't wanted." "You were," Eli said firmly. "Every day. Every breath I took after the war, I carried you in it." The boy blinked fast, staring hard at the sky like it might hold the answer to something. "I'm not angry," he said. "You don't have to protect me from your anger." "I'm not. I think I'm tired of not knowing. I'm glad you told me." Back at the house, June waited by the doorway, her hands tucked into her shawl. When she saw them walking side by side, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. That night, the family gathered around the fire pit. Caleb took a spot between Tommy and Sarah, and when he reached for a blanket, Sarah scooted closer to share hers. Eli stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the boy who used to be just a memory. "You finally gonna stay?" June asked. He turned toward her, smiling. "For good this time." It had rained the night before, and the scent of damp earth still clung to the wind. June was making cornbread in the kitchen. Eli was splitting wood near the barn. Caleb and the kids were in the pasture, racing horses. Everything felt still, settled, earned, until the knock came. Not urgent. Just steady enough to say, "You should open this door," June answered, wiping her hands on her apron. The woman standing on the porch looked like she'd come a long way. Her dress was frayed, her bonnet drooping from rain, but her eyes, sharp as a hawk's. "I'm looking for Eli Harper," she said. "It's a matter of life and death." June didn't flinch. "You'll want to come inside." Eli stepped in, face marked by cautious recognition. "Do I know you?" "You knew my sister," the woman replied. "Annabelle Riggins." The name hit Eli like a jolt. "She was—" "My sister," the woman said again. "She passed last winter. Fever. But before she died, she told me something that belongs to you." From her satchel, she pulled a bundle of worn cloth, unfolded slowly. Inside was a locket, small, gold, and unmistakable. Eli's hands trembled. I gave her this before I left for the war. The woman nodded. She kept it close until her last breath. Then she added carefully, she also left behind a little girl. Eli blinked. A daughter? Yours? Silence. Long and thick like molasses in a cold jar. She's 7. Her name's Mara, and she's in trouble. The man Annabelle left her with. He's no father. He drinks. He gambles. And last I heard, he's heading toward the mining town of Eldon's Hollow. June spoke first. Where's the girl now? Gone, the woman whispered. He took her. I came straight here. I didn't know where else to go. Eli looked out the window, toward the fields where his other children played. Then he looked at Caleb, his son, splitting a fence rail with practiced ease. Another child, another piece of himself. We leave at dawn, he said. The morning broke quiet, cold, and clear. Eli saddled his oldest horse, Dusty, with hands that barely trembled, though his heart beat faster than any gallop. June came up behind him, holding a scarf. You're not going alone, she said. Eli looked at her. I figured you'd say that. She smiled slightly. I'm not the only one. Caleb walked up with a rifle slung across his shoulder, saddlebags packed. You've got 6 kids and a ranch to protect, Eli told him. And one girl out there who might be my sister, Caleb replied. I'm coming. Eli didn't argue. Not because he agreed, because he was proud. The woman, Clara Riggins, mounted her horse too, her jaw clenched with urgency. They rode out together just past sunrise. 4 riders, 1 promise. The wind felt colder the closer they got to Eldon's Hollow. By sundown, they stopped at a trading post on the edge of the canyon. Old man behind the counter gave them one long look. If you're headed to Eldon's, he said, you'd best know who runs it now. We're looking for a girl, Clara said. Lots of girls in that town, he muttered. Too many without names. June stepped forward. This one's name is Mara. She's 7. Dark hair, quiet. The man's eyes softened. Heard of a child like that? Saw a man dragging her by the wrist 2 nights ago. Big fella. Scar over his brow. Eli's fists clenched. That's him. They rode hard into the night. The trail narrowed as hills rose into jagged cliffs. Coyotes howled in the distance. Caleb kept watch from the rear, his eyes sharp. At one point they passed an overturned wagon charred at the edges. Bandits, maybe, or worse. No one spoke, not until they saw the glow of lanterns in the distance. Eldon's Hollow. They arrived just before midnight. A crooked town. 1 saloon, 2 gambling halls, and too many men who watched strangers too long. Clara pointed to the far end of the street. That's where I saw him last, with her. Eli nodded. We go in, we get her, and we ride out fast. The saloon doors creaked open, and all eyes turned toward the strangers. Eli stepped in first. Weathered, quiet, and unmistakably resolved. Caleb followed, his hand near the grip of his revolver. June stayed outside with Clara, watching the alleys. Inside, the room was thick with cigar smoke and the sound of a badly tuned piano. Men glanced up from their cards, sizing them up. No one spoke, until Eli approached the bar, looking for a man with a scar over his brow. He came through here with a little girl. Dark hair. 7. The bartender hesitated. Ain't seen her. Eli's voice dropped low. Try again. A man in the back coughed loudly, then stood. Big, broad, scar across his face like a crooked lightning bolt. You looking for me? Outside, Clara's breath caught. That's him. June placed a hand on her shoulder. We're going to bring her home. Inside, tension coiled like a rattler ready to strike. Where's the girl? Eli asked. The man scoffed. She's mine now. Paid for her keep. Ain't no law says otherwise in these parts. Caleb's voice cut through like a blade. She's a child and she's not yours. The man reached for his hip, but Eli was faster. One warning shot split the air and buried into the wooden beam above. Everyone froze. Next one won't miss, Eli said. Where is she? The back door creaked open. A small, trembling voice called out, Papa? Everyone turned. There she was. Mara. Dark hair, pale face, in a faded blue dress that didn't fit. Her eyes locked onto Eli's, then darted to Clara. Aunt Clara! She ran, arms wide. Clara scooped her up, burying her face into the girl's tangled hair. Tears poured freely. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here. The man with the scar growled low. She's not going anywhere. Eli stepped between him and the girl. You can try, but you won't leave standing. The saloon stayed silent. Then a grizzled voice from the poker table muttered, Let him go, Pete. You lost. The scarred man stared Eli down, then backed away slowly. This ain't over. It is for you, Eli said. They rode out of Eldon's Hollow before the sun rose. Mara clung to Clara, but her eyes never left Eli. Are you really my papa? Eli looked back, voice thick. If you'll let me be. She nodded, slow and sure. I'd like that. The Harper Ranch looked different under morning light. The wind had calmed. The sky blushed pink and gold. It was the kind of morning that whispered new beginnings. Eli lifted Mara gently from the saddle. She held onto his coat a moment longer than needed, then slowly took in her surroundings. Is this really home now? He nodded. If you want it to be. She glanced at the porch where the other children stood, wide-eyed, silent. June gave a soft wave. Come on, honey, we made biscuits. Inside, the warmth of the hearth melted away the last chill from Eldon's hollow. Mara sat between Clara and June, eating slowly, still uncertain. Caleb brought over a carved wooden horse. I made it, he said, setting it in front of her. He's called Buckshot. She ran a hand over the smooth edges. Thank you. It was the first time her voice didn't tremble. Later in the barn, Eli watched as Mara helped Lily brush down one of the ponies. He leaned on the rail beside Caleb. She's strong, Caleb said. Too strong for her age. So were we, Caleb replied. She'll fit here. Eli turned the thought over in his mind. A family of 7. An 8th now, and him. Still unsure if he deserved any of it. That evening, while the others played by lantern light, Mara sat on the porch beside Eli. She looked up at him with eyes too wise. You don't have to pretend to like me, she said quietly. He blinked. What? The others, they belong here. I'm just extra. Eli turned to her fully. Mara, I didn't ride into that town because I had to. I did it because I wanted to bring you home. Not just to the ranch, but into this family. She looked down at her hands. So, you're not sending me away? He shook his head. You're part of us now. As long as you want to be. A long silence passed. Then she leaned into his side, just a little. Okay, I'll try. He smiled, his heart swelling in a way it hadn't in years. That's all I ask. The first snow came earlier than anyone predicted. Flakes drifted down like slow-falling feathers, coating the Harper ranch in white silence. The fences vanished beneath drifts. Horses huddled in their stalls. Smoke curled up from the chimney like a quiet prayer. Inside the cabin, the fire roared. Children's laughter echoed as they chased one another with mittens and blankets. But something in Eli's gut told him the winter wouldn't pass without challenge. That night, Mara stirred in her sleep. Clara found her sitting upright on the cot, eyes wide. Bad dream? Clara asked gently. Mara nodded, clutching a pillow to her chest. He was there. That man. The one with the scar. He found us again. Clara sat beside her, rubbing her back. He's gone, sweetie. He can't hurt you. Not here. But what if he tries? Mara whispered. What if he takes someone else? Clara looked toward the window, snow piling up on the sill. Then he'll answer to all of us. A week passed. Supplies thinned. Caleb and Eli rode out to the trading post with sleds and 2 of the strongest horses. Wind howled through the trees. Icicles hung from branches like glass daggers. As they reached the halfway point, Caleb turned. You ever think this would be your life? Raising a whole clan? Eli let out a quiet laugh. Some days I still don't believe it's real. It is, Caleb said. And you're doing better than you think. Back at the ranch, June helped the kids make bread from scratch. Flour dusted the floor in their faces. Mara looked up from kneading. Do you think he'll come back? June paused, knowing exactly who she meant. Even if he did, he'd find more than just a scared little girl here now. He'd find a whole family. And we fight for our own. Mara's fingers stilled. Then slowly she smiled. That night the storm broke. Snow hammered the roof. The wind screamed. The family gathered near the hearth, wrapped in quilts and hope. Eli took a quiet moment to look around. 7 children. 1 once struggling widower. And the warmth of something he never thought he'd feel again. Belonging. We'll make it through this, he said softly. Mara leaned her head against his arm. Because we're not alone anymore. Spring came like a slow breath over the plains. Snow melted into the thirsty soil. The creek sang again. Buds sprouted on the cottonwoods near the fence line. Life at the Harper Ranch had found rhythm. Meals together, lessons by the fire, and laughter in the barn. For the first time in years, Eli felt something like peace. Maybe even happiness. Then came the knock on the gate. It was just past dawn when Clara spotted him. A man on horseback waiting just outside the fence. His coat was dusty, his hat low. And even from the porch, Eli could tell he wasn't just passing through. He walked out slowly, hand resting near his belt. Morning, Eli said. You Eli Harper? The man asked. I am. Name's Silas Trent, government writer. I bring news from Montana Territory about a family auction from last winter. Eli's heart sank. He kept his face calm. I'm listening. Silas reached into his satchel and pulled out papers. You took guardianship of 7 children. The youngest, Mara, her case has been flagged. Someone's looking for her. Back inside, the family had gathered, their joy tempered by tension. Who's looking for her? June asked sharply. A distant uncle says he's kin. Wants to claim her, maybe her late parents' land. Mara stood in the corner, hands trembling. I don't want to go, she whispered. Eli knelt beside her. No one's taken you without a fight. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Letters written, statements sworn. Neighbors rode in to offer help. Even the mayor vouched for Eli, testifying to the home he'd built for the children. One night, as the stars blanketed the prairie, Mara slipped outside and sat beside Eli on the porch. "Will you still want me, even if I'm not supposed to be here?" He looked at her. This brave, quiet child who had found her voice in the middle of his broken life. "Mara, you were meant to be here. The law may call you a ward, but to me, you're my daughter." Her chin wobbled. "I like the way that sounds. Then let's make it real." The courthouse in Cottonwood Ridge stood tall and square, its whitewashed boards weathered by prairie wind. Inside, the townsfolk gathered quietly, whispers passing between pews like a church before a sermon. At the front sat Mara, her small hand wrapped tightly in Eli Harper's. Clara, June, and the rest of the children sat close, forming a quiet wall of love behind them. Judge Whitaker entered with his glasses low on his nose and a look of kindness earned by age. "We are here today to determine the legal guardianship of one Miss Mara Wells." The room grew still. Silas Trent stood and laid out the facts. Mara's blood relative had stepped forward, claiming rights. But he hadn't shown up himself. Only sent a letter, thin and cold like the man who wrote it. Then Eli rose. He didn't bring a speech, just his truth. "I didn't buy a family at that auction," he began. "I found one." He glanced back at the children. "Each of them brought something back to me I thought I'd lost. Laughter, purpose, faith. I didn't save them. They saved me." He turned to the judge. "This isn't about names on paper. It's about who stands beside you when it's hard, who shows up every morning with a smile and a heart full of hope." Mara looked up at him, eyes shining. Judge Whitaker tapped the bench once. "It is the decision of this court that Mr. Eli Harper be granted full legal guardianship of Mara Wells, effective immediately." Cheers erupted. June cried openly. Clara hugged Mara so tight she squeaked. Eli just knelt and opened his arms. Mara flew into them. "Welcome home, sweetheart," he whispered. "I've been home," she said into his shirt. "Now it's just official." Months passed. The ranch grew. The fences held. The laughter continued. One warm evening, Eli sat beside Clara beneath the stars. The children were asleep. The air smelled of fresh hay and wild mint. "Ever think we'd end up here?" he asked her softly. Clara took his hand. "I hoped we would." Eli smiled, heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. "Then I reckon we should start calling this what it really is." "And what's that?" she asked. "Home."